Hey, Noah here. I'm an indie game developer working on an open world pixel art game, Chef RPG, where you can run the restaurant of your dreams, explore an open world to gather your own ingredients, and socialize with the strange and fascinating characters of its world. I've been developing this game for 2 years, and now that we are at a point in development where the game loop is almost complete, the next feature to add is making all the characters come alive by giving them a daily schedule. These characters should travel around the game world, go to work, run shops, visit their friends, hang out at the bathhouse, and go to sleep at the end of the day. Taking a logical approach, the first thing that needs to be created is a list of all the activities that each character will do at any given time during the day. For developing a game efficiently, it's important to make every system as modular as possible. So rather than creating a brand new script for every character's daily routine, which would take forever, I want to build a modular system where I can easily add and subtract activities to a character's schedule. That way, it will be easy to edit and add new activities in the future. After some tinkering, I managed to make a script that lets you add and subtract activities and set their start and end times, with the characters having different activities on the weekend. We'll need to add seasonal differences in the future, since it would make sense that characters have different activities between the summer and the winter. So looking at these activities, we will need to create several new systems. Obviously, the first thing we need is a script that can read the time, read the schedule, and send the characters on their way. This is typically known as a manager script, a script that brings all the components together. The second thing we need is some sort of global pathfinding script that can send characters in between scenes. It's not hard to read the schedule and just teleport the character to the next location, but this wouldn't be immersive. We need to actually see the character walk through all the maps, going through all the correct exit points to reach the next destination. This will be tricky. We will also need special points in every map that the NPC will interact with. In the case of the sleep activity, we will need a bed that the character will travel to. If they are running a shop, there needs to be a designated space on the map that the character will stay in and not run off. Here we have the manager script. I won't dive too deep into it, but it essentially reads the schedules every 30 minutes and tells every character if they need to be somewhere else. It also keeps track of the location of each character at any given moment, which helps to know where they are even when they are outside our current scene. Now comes the tough part, creating a pathfinding system to send the characters between scenes. Now in Unity, you can simplify the entire setup by making your entire game in one single scene, but this could dramatically lower the game's performance. It's good to separate your game into multiple scenes if performance becomes an issue. The drawback to this is that you won't have access to information from other scenes like the location of objects or that scene's pathfind grid. So we will need to figure out a way to pathfind characters between scenes without actually accessing the other scenes. After some thinking, the solution I came up with is to create a miniature representation of all the large exterior maps using a couple of square nodes and keeping this object in every map. Chef RPG uses a grid-based pathfinding system which finds the shortest path from one point to another within a square grid. We could apply this method to entire maps, however this won't work for our current maps because these overworld maps are set up in an irregular way. These exterior maps are a rectangular shape rather than squares, and the regular grid-based pathfinding system no longer works on an irregular grid like this. So after some thinking, I came up with a makeshift solution. We can break these rectangles up into 2 tiles. Every 2 tiles of the same color makes up one scene, and we can use vector comparisons to pathfind the shortest route. If you start at one scene, the script calculates the shortest amount of scenes to travel through to get to the target based on the position of these squares. Each tile remembers which scene it is, so this makeshift pathfinding system will still work with irregular maps. It now basically operates very similar to a grid-based pathfinding system, except each tile is part of a bigger map scene. I set up nodes at every map exit with an ID of the target map so that the characters will know which exit to go through when moving towards the next map. I also did a test and determined that it takes roughly 30 minutes of in-game time for an NPC to traverse one map, so when doing pathfinding calculations, I'll need to add 30 minutes for every exterior map that the character is traveling through to get the correct location at any given time. The purpose of this is that if I'm standing in one of these middle maps that an NPC is traveling through, I want to be able to see the NPC spawn at the correct entrance, walk through my current map, and leave the map at the correct exit. They shouldn't just teleport from the starting map to the end map, hence the reason for calculating travel times when reading the schedules. All the interior maps are also in separate scenes, and they also need to be accounted for when calculating the route. Thankfully, interior scenes typically only have one access point, and you can't access them from multiple scenes. Because they are simpler, we can directly link them to their respective overworld map, and we don't need to run pathfinding scripts on them. Now that we have the schedules and pathfinding scripts ready, we can try them out. So this is Hazel, an android girl who runs a bubble tea shop. At 10 PM, Hazel is still in town hanging out, but at 11 PM, she should be back home. If we watch these exits, you can see that at 11:30 PM, Hazel spawns at the exit node connected to the main town and walks towards her house. I'll just speed this up till she enters. Once inside, we can see that she is in the house wandering around. Now that the basic schedule system is working, we need to give these characters something to do rather than just walk around randomly. I mentioned I wanted them to run their shops and be able to go to sleep. For going to sleep, it was a simple matter of updating the bed sprites and separating the bed cover. I placed a doppelganger here so that when an NPC arrives at the bed, we can update this doppelganger with what the NPC should look like, while the actual NPC will become invisible. So if we wait inside this house, Hazel will come in at the correct time and hang around for a bit before going to bed. Now if you notice, this scene is separated into 2 levels. To make pathfinding work, I had to add a way for characters to go upstairs by updating the pathfinding script. It actually turned out simpler than I thought. If the target point is at a different level than the character's current level, all I have to do is have the pathfind script target a level change point, which is located at the top of the stairs. When Hazel arrives at this point, she'll be teleported to the opposing point on the second level, and the pathfind script continues on its original route. So with this updated pathfinding script, we don't have to worry about multiple levels in the scene, and we could even have things like multi-level restaurants in the future. When it's time for Hazel to go to sleep, she will target the bed and her main body will disappear and the doppelganger will appear in the bed. We'll probably need to add the eyes so that they close when she is sleeping, else it'll look like she's wide awake the whole night. And we can wait all the way until morning where she'll get out of bed and start her new day. The next order of business is to have Hazel open and run her shop. For this, it was a simple matter of creating specific nodes for where the shopkeeper can stand. When it's time for her to go to work, she will target this map and target her designated shop nodes so she won't wander off. During the time of the day when she is running her shop, the dialogue menu will be different and the shop option will appear, which won't be visible normally. I also spent some time adding some new items into the game. For Hazel, we can now purchase a lot of different bubble teas and milks, which are consumable items that can restore your health and stamina. Now let's try the schedule system on a more complicated map. This is another new interior map, accessible from the main town. It contains a shop, as well as the home of 2 different characters, Bianca and Thelio. Bianca runs the tech and augmentation shop on the ground level, and her room is just to the left. Thelio lives on the upper level and runs the convenience store in White Ash Harbor during the day. So let's play out their schedules and see what happens. They go about their day just fine. Bianca runs her shop in the afternoon and goes to bed pretty late. Thelio heads out of town early morning and returns at night. Now, if we run through the day, we can see a couple issues. First is the characters just walking through the doors and the door never opens. Second is that if you see here, Thelio is walking into Bianca's room and Bianca can end up in Thelio's room since she will target random points in the map to walk to. To fix both of these issues, we will need to add a script to the doors to check which characters can pass through them. This is a useful feature to add since players will also be restricted from entering certain doors unless their friendship with a given character is high enough. There's a couple ways to do this, but I decided to go with a method involving adding square nodes with every door, and these little squares will be placed on the pathfind grid. Every time a character's path crosses one of these nodes, it will check if the character is allowed to pass through. If not, the character will instead target a different location. Also, if a character will be walking through a given door and is 1 tile away, they will stop for a second and open the door and close the door behind them. So now, if we run through this entire scene again, it looks a lot better. Characters will open their door and close the door behind them, and they won't be able to access the homes of other characters unless they are friends. That's about it for the schedule system. There's a ton more activities and features we still need to add, but now that the base system is in place, we'll be able to see the main characters roaming around the world and be able to access their shops. I'll probably jump on setting up their relationship system and quest systems next to tie everything together. Besides the schedule system, I spent some time on various smaller activities, from doing various bug fixes and polishing areas of the map that don't look as good. Because I started this project with little experience in pixel art and my pixel art skill is constantly growing, I frequently redraw older art to bring it up to the standard of newer assets. Now, it's not really good to keep redrawing everything. Every art asset can be infinitely improved, and you have to find a point where you stop and say that it's good enough, else it will way overextend the development process. My strategy is to redraw what I feel is the worst asset in the game, which results in the biggest change and the biggest sense of actually accomplishing something. And after a couple weeks, I might redraw the next worst item in the game. This prevents me from spending too much time redoing things, while the art is still being incrementally improved over time. In this case, one of the oldest art assets I wanted to redo is the character creation panel, which was created over a year ago. For the redesign, I first created a slightly better looking panel to match the current UI color palette. This works fine, but after some thinking, I thought it would be so much better if the character creation system is incorporated into the intro scene somehow. Games like Skyrim and Fallout seamlessly weave their character creation system into the intro scene, and there was no reason why I can't do that for this game. I've decided that the intro scene would take place on board the train, where you are first traveling towards White Ash Harbor. Kind of taking the idea from Fallout 4, your character starts in a bathroom, and this is where you can adjust your appearance. We have most of the same options as before, where you can choose your body, your hairstyle, and a small selection of clothing items. You will be able to further customize your character in-game with the equipment that you find, and there will be barbers that can give you additional hairstyles. After you type your name and select some starting stats, you can begin the game. I wanted the scene to flow into the gameplay, so your character walks forward after pressing the start game button. The scene transitions into the actual train, and your character continues walking out of the bathroom, where you'll now have the freedom to move around. For Chef RPG, I want to cut down on cutscenes as much as possible, unless it's super integral to the story. When I play games, I usually get pretty annoyed during the super scripted scenes where your player can't do anything, unless if it's some really beautiful cinematic. I think most players probably feel the same way and would rather just play the game. If possible, I think it's better to weave the story directly into the gameplay without taking away player control. It's one of the things that the Bethesda RPGs do really well, where you rarely lose control of your character, even within story-heavy moments. So there's a 2-hour window before the train arrives, which is about 2 minutes real time, and you can walk around the train while finishing the rest of the intro. When the train arrives in town, you can step out and begin exploring the world and meeting the locals. So that's about it for this video. This devlog took a lot longer to get to due to the character schedule system being so big. Now that this complicated schedule is ready, we have a much smoother road ahead. The remaining systems should be fairly straightforward, and afterwards I can just spend all my time adding more content, which is a lot more fun. Be sure to wishlist Chef RPG on Steam if you are interested in playing. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.